Hi everyone, I hope you hear me. Our talk will be about how you can create a localization. Everything all right? Okay. Yeah, you also have the link to the Q&A in case you want to ask questions. Yeah, what I want to do is go quickly through the a bit what's about what you have to do a localization. The first part is just the really basic stuff, the chart of account. And then there is a lot of other stuff, a lot of other things like the electronic invoicing, the reporting. There is really a lot, but I'll try to be a bit more generic and say, okay, what is what, and give some examples more about what do we do in generic and what do we do in specific. So, why do we need localizations? Well, it's because if an accountant he's going to test Odoo and he wants to see what's going on, he will check the accounts, he will check the taxes, and if you don't put the specific taxes for Belgium, France, or any country, the guy will not understand. An accountant does not understand the accounting. Well, he does mostly, but he will complain if it doesn't correspond to what he is used to in his country. So we have to provide from Odoo some basic module that already gives him the right data to start with. And if we are talking about that, we are saying chart of accounts, but we say chart of accounts, but it's not only accounts. Typically, in a localization module, which is mostly named LTNN underscore and the ISO code name. We put the accounts, but also the taxes. And taxes can be linked to those accounts. And then we have the fiscal positions. So the fiscal positions can be that if you do export, you can have on a product the default tax, and then if you apply the fiscal position, it will go to a tax of 0% export. So the fiscal positions take into account for example, the country of the partner, and from there it can alter your tax, and that's also data that we will keep in the localization. Then further on we have the account groups, which is more the hierarchy of the accounts, and we have the tax groups, which is the which you see actually bottom right on the invoice, and which say how the taxes need to be grouped and summarized in the end of a tax of an invoice. Yeah, now you might be wondering why is my screen black? Actually, these are slides I copied from a presentation of 3 years ago. And why I wanted to do that is simply because actually we kind of changed a bit. The taxes before, they were written in XML. And the fiscal positions might be in XML, and then the accounts would mostly be in CSV. And then, yeah, so some things were in XML, some things were in CSV, and the talk was like targeted to developers and product owners alike. And yeah, but as a developer, actually, these days, but how we changed things, actually, as a developer for the COA, you shouldn't be doing anything because it's all data. It's all data you are manipulating. And that data, actually a product owner knows best which accounts are to be used, which taxes are to be used. And that's actually, yeah, so we are saying why should we do it? And the thing is, he shouldn't do anything because right now we decided to all the data for the COA, the accounts, the taxes, the fiscal position, and so on, we decided to put it into CSV. And for a developer, a CSV might be counterintuitive because for the taxes, the XML was quite complicated, and if you put it into file, it's not natural at first sight to put it in CSV, but because in XML, if you have, for example, a diff between one version and the next version, it's easier. There's only one line that changes, and as a developer, you would say, "Oh, I have my XML. I see better how the changes are." And it's true that with CSV, if you do git diff with CSV, sometimes it goes well, sometimes not. But the point is that actually, as a developer, we should try to give it more to functional people. And right now, we put everything into CSVs. But that's not the only thing. Those CSVs are also not in the manifest anymore. Because, and that's also why I showed the the old presentation, I had to explain that all the data we loaded before in the previous version was previous versions. It was all put in a table .template. So we had a table account.template, a table account text template, and so on. All these things are gone. It also means because before you could say, okay, I have account template, I will update your module, then the account templates would be updated, but your existing accounts in the database wouldn't be updated. So it means that we actually needed to introduce another mechanism to load the accounts and the taxes into the database. So they are loaded differently. And so not through the manifest as you would usually do. Also, we decided that the chart template, which was actually also a record before, that we won't have it anymore. So on the company, we'll just have a selection fields which will say which is the chart of account being used, and that will just be a string, like BE for Belgium, ES for Spain, with the country code. Of course, you can also have multiple chart of accounts per country, and then you can put an extra thing behind the ES or the BE. An extra thing about those CSVs is that one struggle we have with localizations as well is everything that is translations. So we have many. So the thing is that the translations for localizations are not in transifex, and one good solution that we have now for that is that you can say in the CSV name at ES for example, and that way you can put an extra column with the Spanish translation. Also, often those accounts or those taxes come from official sources, and they already have the official languages versions, so it's good to have them in the CSV itself. Most important still about those CSV is functional people can handle it themselves, and they can have really an overview about how about the data we put in the basic COA chart of account. So it means for the directory structure that if you have, for example, here for Spain, that under the data folder we put another folder template, and there we put the accounts, the fiscal positions, the account groups, the tax groups, and the taxes. You also notice that for Spain we have still the hierarchy of chart templates. So we have a common one, you have one for the associaciones, I think it's non-profit, the full and the small and mid-sized enterprises, which have but we don't have a chart template record anymore, but we still have a way to make an inheritance between the different chart of accounts. So there's a way to say I have a minimal chart of account and I have a bigger chart of account with more accounts that inherit from the basic one. So yeah, I don't know if this will be very visible, but so this is what you, so here this way you could load the CSV into for LibreOffice, for example. What you see is that in comparison with before is that you don't have a column with the chart template itself because it's actually in the name of the file. We have the name of the account itself, but also the Spanish translation and the code, and the rest is like more or less how it was before. Then we have the taxes. The taxes are a bit more complicated, but they were complicated in XML, as I said before. And because if you know the tax configuration, you have like invoice repetition lines and refund repetition lines, and those were two sections in the XML. And what we decided right now is to say, okay, we just put document type here around on every line, and that way we can distinguish between invoice and refund. The basic reason is that otherwise we should have had all those invoice and then further invoice lines, repetition lines, and then further in the sheet columns further we would have had to put the refund ones, because if you make a CSV with a one to many in it, you need to copy all the columns basically. That's what you see. So yeah. So yeah, maybe I can make myself more clear if I open it here. I'm thinking. So if you open it in LibreOffice, it will say, yeah. What we mostly do is always use the delimiter with the double quote and the comma. And what you see is that you have the main tax information here, and if you scroll further for the different repetition lines, it will be filled in here. That's how. Also, but functional people actually have this habit from importing CSVs already. I should go back to the presentation. Okay. But there is, yeah, and yeah. So this is the taxes, and for those taxes, we did something new as well in 17. We now have 3 fields on the taxes. Before we have 2 to name the taxes, and now we have 3. We have the name, and the name has to be short and codified, and it's even not a problem if you don't immediately understand what it is for. Why? Because we want to encourage speed encoding, so that if you encode, if you type a tax, and you, for example, here you just type EU or 1010 EU, and then it would automatically select the right one. We really want people to be able to encode accounts to encode really quickly. And so you have the name, which can be short and very short and codified. You have the description then should have more explanation. It could be EU, intra-community, but that it makes it clear at least to the user. Also, these fields can be translated by all of them, I think. And the invoice label is just in case it's from the law, they ask to have it as on the PDF or in the print. That's also something where we made a lot of effort in between 16 and 17. Also, all the localizations almost have been, I think, translated to English, and then have the language of the country itself as a second language. Yeah. And how does this how does this work actually behind? Is that the name search is inherited and is then calling this parse name search, where it actually splits the entire string more or less to put lots of percents, and the percents and the like function allow for putting more or less anything, and that's actually what allows the speed encoding to be more flexible in how the user puts his puts the text, and that way selects it more easily. So it's an inheritance from the name search, which calls this method for that. Yeah, then we have fiscal positions. It's the same principle. The advantage also in the spreadsheet is that you can immediately put the fiscal position and all of the detailed information, all of the mapping. Of course, we need different columns for taxes and accounts. For the fiscal, with respect to Europe, we have actually worked a lot on the VIES as well. So there is like an order, like if you have the first, there's like a sequence in the fiscal positions. If your country is your country itself. So for example, for Belgium, if it is Belgium, I will go to the national regime. Then and then if I'm Europe, then I can go to the intra-community regime. But in that case, you only go to the intra-community regime when you have VAT, but that VAT also need to be VIES compliant, and we did an effort for that, because a lot of people were complaining with the fiscal positions that it wouldn't be enough. That what we have to right now with the automatic application of the fiscal position wouldn't be sufficient. But I think with that we get there. And then of course we have the account groups. That's for the account hierarchy, and we have the tax groups. It's how you group the taxes together to have the summary in the invoice. Yeah. And those are also loaded as templates before, yeah. But this is mainly for functional. This was mainly for functionals. As a developer, there's still the possibility that you want to override something there, or there is still some Python code that is needed. Also because the chart template object itself does not exist anymore, and you will see that in the models as well. For the chart template, we will add a Python file. And what can we put there? You see that here you put common template data, so the name of the template. And for example, here this is the parent chart of account in Spain, which is actually never used, so the visible 0. And we can also put the properties. The properties are the company dependent fields. We have a receivable account, and that receivable account is set in a property which is like, you could say it's like as a default value in that company, and that way it gets set. So if you to this one, but you will say, how does it know this one? Because this one is an XML ID that will not exist in the database because the templates are gone. And that's where this decorator comes in actually. The account common for the here, the 4300, actually the reference XML, when you instantiate it, will be this one. You will put the ID of the company underscore that XML ID, and that will be the reference for that receivable account in that company. But here, yeah, we don't put it, but afterwards it is calculated. this XML ID, IR model data is calculated from this, and we do this everywhere. So this, we don't have the template record in the database anymore, but we have a mechanism to see what we load from our CSV corresponds to what we have in the database. And so this is just done on the for the template itself. So there's no really an object related, but then you have things you are going to instantiate on the company itself, and that can be that. For example, you will say that if you install the Spain chart of accounts, that the fiscal country will be Spain. That there is a bank account code prefix, which is a field on the company, and this, by the way, is going to be used then later to create the accounts, to create a bank account preset already in the database. And right now as well, we fixed the translations for that, so that all the translations are being put on the name of that bank account. And this cannot only be done for company, but it can be done for plenty of other things as well. So this allows to, yeah, it this allows to without templates still do the same, and actually even a bit more powerful. Now, one thing. The fact that we don't have a template anymore has also made us think about, yeah, but why not be able to upgrade your account? Because it happens a lot that the law changes, that something changes, and you adapt it in the accounts, but nobody has it because there was no way to update those accounts. And right now in V17, you will notice that when you install localization and then you check, there will be a reload button. And you will be able to reload the COA, and so get all the latest changes. For example, if taxes are added, percentages that change, but also if we update, if we add a report, if we update the report because the law changes, all these things can be updated now. Actually, in 15 and 16, we kind of have already done this through upgrade scripts, but here you are able to do it manually, which gives you extra control. Another advantage is that sometimes you want to add a module and put some kind of post-init hook, which means that there is some module that adds things to the COA. I can give the example of, for Italy, we have a withholding module. It's an extra module with extra taxes. And the withholding is quite complicated there, and they have a lot of new taxes that they need to load. And for that, we just browse, so we add the CSVs as well in that module. But then when you have already an existing chart of account, a company with an existing chart of account, you're able to load those new taxes easily by just calling this parse CSV and load the data. So this is just an example. So you can, so this reloading of COA is really handy to update the chart of accounts you're having. And there is a bit of a logic behind it. So if we reload, we will never delete anything, because it's possible that you manually change the taxes, the accounts, and yeah, you don't. If you added something, you don't want the system to delete it by accident. But everything is based on that XML ID. So if it was before in the CSV, well then, and it's again in the CSV, but something changed, then it will be changed because the XML ID that we refer to is the same. There are, yeah, and we try to be a bit conservative as well, because suppose you have duplicate account codes. Suppose you have created an account and then suddenly we change the CSV and we add an extra account with the same code. Of course, you want to avoid that unicity constraint. In that case, we just put a no update on the existing one, and we let the existing one be what it is, and we don't update it. In the case that what also happens if you have taxes, which suppose that we have one tax with like this, and then the XML ID changes completely, then we have a safety mechanism where we copy the tax and we put alt before. Normally, actually, this should happen very little because it's only really happen when the type of the tax changes. Yeah. And for the fiscal positions, it's only when you add new taxes, and those new taxes are also in the fiscal positions that we will add them, because maybe you changed everything and we cannot predict what you changed. So we try to be a bit conservative over there. So so that was for the basic COA, for the chart of accounts. Of course, there are a lot of other features that we do with localizations. It doesn't end at just accounts and so on. For example, those taxes need to go into reports and so on, which we actually also mostly put in the basic community module. But here, sometimes you can go to electronic invoicing or extra auditing reports. There are plenty of things that can be added into a localization, and yeah, it's always a bit of I suppose you have a new demand, a new need. It's always thinking about, yeah, do we have the feature already in generic? Does accounting already do this somewhere? Or do I need to develop it in the localization from scratch? Or maybe there has already been done something more or less the same that I can reuse. Or maybe there is even something where we open I would say, where we prepare the methods to be inherited, so you can play around with it. If we do that too much, that we make it too much frameworky, we mostly get Fabien behind us saying, no, you cannot put too much framework in generic. Please, please give enough freedom to the people implementing the localization to do what they want. So this is always a bit a balance between what do we put in generic, how do we let people inherit it, and so on. And I will try to give some examples of that. One first thing is quite simple. Mostly in a localization, you want to add some specific fields, because you will need to add some specific fields, because on an invoice they need certain information for report, because they need a certain information for electronic invoicing. If we add something in a specific module, so the modules are mostly already named like this, but we prefix the new field like this if it's on an existing model. And then if you add that field, you can add it on an object like an invoice, which already has a company ID. An invoice has a specific company ID. So if and that company has a fiscal country, you know, that company is a Peruvian one, for example, and you know, okay, that extra field that I add, I need to show it in the interface when it's Peru, and when it's not Peru. Actually, I should have put not equals to Peru here. So and that you can simply solve now. We don't have ATTRS anymore. In the XML, you just put invisible equals country code is not equal to Peru. But we have been struggling a long time. We wanted to ask POs, what do you do with products? Because products are shared among companies. What do you do with partners? Because partners are shared among multiple companies. And for that, you can simply put invisible, not in fiscal country code. So we added everywhere a field, fiscal country codes on those like partner product, which can be shared among different companies. And what happens is that there it depends on the context. So sometimes you can still have a company ID on the object itself, because you can put a company ID on a product, but it's not required. Mostly actually you are going to share them. And then whether you show an extra field on a product or a partner will depend on what you put in the company switcher. If you select multiple companies and one of the companies is Peru, or in this case Brazil, but in that case it will be shown. And that is because we have the API depends context, and the API and the company switcher you have right on top. There you can select and where you select the company, we'll set that in the context, and this will create a account fiscal country codes fields, which is actually just a comma separated of all the country codes. And this way we can just say if BR is not in this string, then make it invisible. One example I gave it before is that is the payment reference. So in Sweden they have specific payment references, OCR2 and OCR3, and it's just something you can inherit. You just need to add in the selection field a new payment reference, and then make a method like this. Can be partner reference as well. So it means the payment reference you have when you with a customer invoice, you want to form a payment reference, and on the journal you can specify which one, and so you just need to inherit this method, and you can say how the reference needs to be formed. Apparently they use check digits and so on. In Belgium we have this thing with those 3 pluses. It's a small thing, but it's another example of how things can be inherited. One thing that's interesting as well is the invoice report. Some countries, like Chile, Argentina, for example, they want their specific invoice format. It has to be exactly this. And so if we are going to have to inherit the invoice format we have in Odoo, and we have to put everywhere, in the case of Chile, then don't show this, but show this. And in the case of this country, it becomes difficult. And so we have made a mechanism, get name invoice report, which allows to say, okay, in the case of when I use LATAM documents and my country is Chile, well, use this report instead. And you can even base this report with a primary view. It's even possible to base this report on the existing basic invoice report, but to change everything, but it will only be changed for this XML. And that way, if they see, okay, in this case if I'm in the case of Chile, I will load this report instead of the regular report. And that way we don't need to put conditions everywhere in the report saying, we don't need to extend the report and put conditions everywhere. So that's something you can easily reuse in your localization as well. This one I think I shouldn't show because it's enterprise code, but it's not much. So so we have SAFT as an audit format used in a lot of countries, and recently also in Austria. We have and so what I want to say here is that you see that they all the countries use the same format, but suddenly Austria wants to map the accounts of that you have in your database to a very old COA that actually nobody uses, and then yeah, actives, passives corresponds to the balance, and those to the P&Ls accounts. And you have to map the old the accounts you have in your database to that old account system that they still have. And so actually the module that we need to do was not much. It was just like, okay, we take the existing functionality that we have from SAFT and that we already have Luxembourg, Norway, and so on, and we just add this little extra field that they need. For UBL, we actually did a lot to make it easy for you and for us to inherit it. And at first sight, I thought we exaggerate. I thought we exaggerate in the things we prepared to inherit, and because UBL, there are a lot of dialects. For people, you have a quite rigid standard with BIS3, but every country can put his little changes. We see that, for example, for Saudi Arabia and Peru, they quite do a lot of changes to the standard. And yeah, Romania and Denmark, we are working actively on. I think we already have the format at least, which has also its specificities. And we did actually like an inheritable abstract class with to get all the values that you need for the UBL, and at the same time you can also inherit the QWeb. So you have a lot of possibility to inherit, and we actually did this for Saudi Arabia, where, for example, in the address they need a building number, typically also for Egypt, I don't know why exactly, and they city subdivision name and a plot identification like that we need to add in the address. And yeah, you can, so we have a method get partner address vals, and we add it to that, and then I think in the XML we also added this. Here you can also play with the primary equals true views, because you can even say, okay, for this part of the QWeb, I will inherit that part. And here you have, yeah, it just goes a for loop, so it would show every one of those elements in the address. So yeah, I think that for Saudi Arabia, we also need to sign, and there is a hashing and so on, which is also added. But yeah, I was like surprised myself that by making it so inheritable, it's also very reusable. I don't know what time it is. Yeah. Send and print wizard is for electronic invoicing, and here we are making a bit of a turn. We used to have a framework account EDI, which is a bit rigid, and so when you confirmed an invoice, it would already it sends it. Well, we will still have the framework as well, but when you confirm an invoice, it would put a banner. We are going to send it, and it would put it in asynchronous. I think sending in asynchronous is still a good idea. But what we saw is that it always, for some countries, the fact that it sends automatically, users were like, yeah, we want more manual control over it. And a second, yeah, more manual. And so it's not a bad idea that so the idea would be that send and print wizard which you have on an invoice to send your invoice to the client as a PDF. You would also use it to trigger the sending to the government or through PayPal. Yeah, and that's what's special here is that what we thought about as well is that it would be good that when you generate the PDF, that when you generate the XML and the PDF, that they are in sync, so that you avoid to have a PDF that looks like this and an XML that actually tells something else. So that's also something we wanted to work out with that send and print wizard, and also try to give more freedom to the localization itself to see how, because a lot of electronic invoicings work differently. Yeah, some are in 2 steps, some are in 1 step. Sometimes you have the cancellation, sometimes you don't have the cancellation, and yeah, that can complicate the modules and the account EDI module, for example. And here with the send and print wizard, we put it standard in account, and it's the responsibility of the localization to handle all the rest. It also means that suppose you make an error, so you send the PDF and the XML together. Suppose you make an error and you need to regenerate the XML. It also means you need to delete the PDF. So it will regenerate the PDF, and you will maybe resend it to your customer, telling, "Look, this is the real PDF that you should have." Yeah, and one other requirement for especially for Mexico is that often people want the invoice only to be sent when they have already an answer from the government. So they need the barcode of the signature already in the PDF to their client, because then their client will see, okay, this has been officially been approved by the government. And for that we made some there are hooks in the send and print wizard as well to say, okay, do I create my XML before or after the PDF? So we have it for PayPal, Mexico, and Italy for the moment. I quickly showed in the code it looks like this. So you inherit that send and print wizard in the invoice, and you can add the things yourself. Mostly we have a checkbox to say, okay, send it, and we also have a field that says, do we make this checkbox visible? Because yeah, in some countries you don't want to send PayPal, and some countries, in fact, if you have a Chilean EDI, yeah, you only want it for your Chilean company. So this determines whether this field is visible. And you can also, sometimes you will put a warning in the wizard as well, if for example you haven't signed up for PayPal yet, yeah, or some info. And so there are 2 methods: call web service after the PDF render, or call your web service before the PDF render. So you will do it after if you don't need some kind of signature from the government that can show to your customer that the document is valid. Yeah, for the moment I can say that the send and print wizard was quite some complexities in it as well, and mainly because the before after, and yeah, the PDF, and also because we we mix, in fact, the generation of the documents, which I think is a good thing to generate all the XML and PDF at the same time. But we sometimes mix it a bit too much, maybe with the electronic invoicing. This is a bit of a balance we need to make constantly. I don't know myself how it will evolve. But it's a balance we need to make constantly, but between complicating things and trying to give simple features to the people using it further in the localizations. Yeah, that's just an example of how. Yeah, I just wanted to. So this is one. This is not Purple itself, but it's the account EDI UBL module who adds this this checkbox in the send and print wizard. And then it adds this this format again. So this way, for every invoice you can send, you can say I want this format and so on. Yeah, and then yeah, I need to admit sometimes sometimes we just redo things. We have done signatures and Xadis 3 times. We try to put some things in common. Hashing, for example, we do the same thing in ticket buy for which is for the Spanish Basque country, as for Saudi Arabia, but yeah, we just did it separately because we don't really find the common ground immediately, and the common ground might be more overkill than doing it in those separate modules. We will also need hashing for Portugal, but I don't know what they what we are doing, but we are thinking about using, actually on the journal you have a hash functionality as well, and there we are thinking about reusing it. So need to see how that will turn out. And for example, yeah, there are cases where we try to generalize withholding, but the withholding in Ecuador is different than the one we have in Italy, and it's different than in other countries. So they all talk about withholding, but it's sometimes different every time. Now we are making something for Argentina as well with withholding, but maybe that one can be reused in some other countries. So it's always a bit of searching the balance between those. Thank you. Don't know if someone will ask me questions. Does the same concept work for the other localizations such as payroll? Yeah, accounting is different than payroll, that's for sure. But we also have LTNN modules, but with payroll attached to them for payroll. Yeah. And yeah, we're thinking actually about sharing demo companies between payroll and an account. But it's it's 2 different modules. Was a translation of COA from the CSV already available in Odoo 16? No. You cannot. You couldn't define a field like I showed you with name at ES in version 16. Yeah. Because everything was also, if we might have translated at the time, but then everything would end up in the PO and the POT files in the I18N folder. And yeah, that's the advantage of the CSV. We don't need to put it there anymore. We can do it because we probably don't need too much translation assistance also, but too much translation assistance, although it might still be, well, although it's also useful, but what I want to say is that it's easy to have it in the CSV. What are the good practices to observe when creating a localization that involves Python code and heavy customizations in the flow? Um, but yeah, one thing I can mention, what I mentioned before, is, for example, to prefix the fields. That if you add new modules, you also prefix them. So you give, also you put in the code. Right, something we do a lot is to make a good distinction between what is being done for the country itself, for that localization, and if so that if you install multiple companies with different chart of accounts, they all work nicely together. And yeah, if you do heavy customizations, yeah, make sure they don't break the regular generic flow. How is archiving of the generated invoices being done? The saving of an unchangeable copy of the audit. But yeah, there are two things there, I think. That, yeah, what you can do is to avoid to reset to draft, so that once you generate the PDF stays as the PDF it is. And another thing you can do for archiving is, yeah, just an idea, is just you select all the attachments, you download them, and you put them, you archive them yourself somewhere else. Can the customer choose after invoice PDF render or before? Yeah, it's mandatory according to each localization. Each localization decides whether you, in the code, it decides whether the PDF is sent after you send it, sent by email to your customer after you send it to the government with a good result or not. Depends on the localization. Is there documentation for the functional to understand the format of CSV? But one thing you can do is export to CSV, and then you have already an idea how it looks like. So then you could import again. How to import the extended chart of accounts or taxes over the base one? Base is already installed. Well, yeah, like was shown in the code, when you have a post init, when you install a new module, you will have a post init hook, and that post init hook, it will check the companies that have already the chart of accounts installed, and it will add the things that are needed. But actually, I have to be careful here, because suppose that you have a simple chart of accounts and a more difficult and a more complete chart of accounts, then you will install the. You can only in the beginning change chart of accounts. Once you have accounting entry, you can't change the chart of accounts anymore. We haven't any mechanism to upgrade from one to the other. At the moment, once you have entries. Yeah, send becomes manual, but what do you do when you send in mass? Well, you can select multiple invoices and also call that wizard and send them in mass. Which is the mechanism to load CSV files? No, that didn't change actually. At the functional level for the physical positions, can taxes be added besides replacing or moving them? Yeah, you just need to add 2 lines with the mapping. In Portugal, your context. Well, for Portugal, somebody is actively working on the Portugal localization. Yeah, you can ask in the booth over there. Yeah. If they say it doesn't correspond to the law, to the Portuguese laws, it's always also good to check until if it's really the case, or if there's a way to do it right. But I think it's something we are actively working on. The use of repartition lines, text amounts. The repartition lines. Well, for a regular text, you will have a base repartition line and then text repartition line, and it says the base will say 100, but then you can also say the base need to report it in that report line, and for the text, which is then 100, the text will be, for example, 17%. That amount, and then you can also say to which line it can be reported. For most of the normal taxes, that's the main purpose of those repartition lines. I don't know by heart about the Czech localization where we are, but I thought there was a basic chart of accounts and so on. I don't think there are reports. Yeah, I went mostly through the path, but I don't. If there are more questions, please ask. Thanks.